Okay, this is a short lecture on the client-server paradigm. So the first question is, what is client-server? It's a paradigm for applications that are distributed over a network or the internet. Basically, they exchange information over the internet to perform some function or task. I think this discussion to explain client server is a lot better when I have an in-person class because we can have some interactivity. But what happens is I kind of just start this discussion with asking my student, what makes a database server a database server? And after some discussion and possibly some guidance or hints from me, they will come up with, because it has the databases or it has the database tables. So basically what I tell them is that's correct because it has the resources. And in the case of a database server, the resources are its databases and or tables. I then ask them a series of related questions. What makes a web server a web server? And basically the answer should be because it has the web pages, which are the resources for a web server. And then I ask, what makes an email server a server? And they say, because it has the email messages. That is its resources. So that's kind of how I define to my students what a server is. Now, as far as the client is a piece of software that forms a connection to the server and makes requests. You know, it may say, if we're talking about a mail server, delete this message for me. Show me email message number 5. That type of thing. When we have applications, we've talked about this before, and it should be reviewed for you. These connections are made on a specific port or sets of ports. And for common services, like the ones we've talked about, these ports are often referred to as well-known ports. Here are some well-known ports that hopefully you have discussed in your previous classes and ones that you should rattle off pretty quickly. So, you know, a lot of times I'll read out a service to my students and then have them answer back and kind of start with the most obvious, which is HTTP. That runs on port 80. Then I ask them about SMTP, which is Simple Mail Transfer Protocol. It runs on port 25. Secure Web Pages, or HTTPS, is on port 443. FTP is on ports 20 and 21. Telnet is on port 23. And Secure Shell is on port 22. So those are things that you should already be familiar with. Some others that we'll talk about over the course of this semester are DHCP. This was kind of written maybe by somebody who, you know, kind of brute forced and maybe hadn't written a lot of applications, but it actually uses 2 ports, ports 67 and 68. We'll talk about DNS, which is port 53. We'll talk about Trivial FTP, which is a version of FTP that doesn't have any error checking built into it. That's on port 69. POP, Post Office Protocol for reading and sending email. That's port 110, at least for version 3 of POP. IMAP, Internet Message Access Protocol, is on port 143. And then SNMP, which is Simple Network Monitoring Protocol, that is on port 161. So like I said, these are the protocols on this slide that we'll be talking about starting real soon through the end of the semester. So that's a really quick discussion on what client-server paradigm is.